All right, I think we're live. So hello and welcome everyone. Happy Saturday, another gorgeous Saturday here on the farm. I want to thank you all for joining me for the third installment of my latest Instagram live series, September Saké Saturdays with Somm4All. Now for those of you who may have missed episode 1 or 2, or episode 1 and 2, don't worry, you can find them both posted to IGTV. As well, you can also find them on my Somm4All Facebook page and my Somm4All YouTube channel. So you can get all caught up at your own speed, no worries there. All right, so let's start with a little bit of housekeeping before today's event. As sake is indeed an alcoholic beverage, I do need to ask that if there is anyone that is tuned in who is not of legal age to buy and consume alcohol where they live, then it's time to say goodbye. What does that mean exactly? Well, I live in Ontario, so in Ontario you need to be 19 years or older to consume alcohol, purchase alcohol legally, so you would need to be 19 years or older to watch today's event. Thanks for your interest nonetheless, but check back with me when you do reach that age. All right, so for everyone else, let's begin with a very quick recap of last week. There was a lot going on. We got a lot in today's event as well, but very quick recap of last week. We talked about basic sake and what I call the 6 prominent premium sake styles. Quick test, who can name them? Anyone recall those 6 basic styles, those 6 premium styles and what the name of that basic style is? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If anyone said that basic sake is known as futsushu, well done. And if you recall that the premium styles, those prominent styles, because there's more than 6, but what I'm going to call the dominant styles, Junmai, Honjozo, Jingo, Daijingo, Junmai Jingo, and Junmai Jingo. So there you have it. Those 6 fairly prominent styles, and the basic sake, the futsushu. Okay, so then we also began chatting a little bit about the differences between the styles. Anybody recall the difference between a Junmai, which is what we had last week, and I talked about a Honjozo. I've yet to showcase one because I'm having trouble finding one, but I did point out that there was a big difference between those 2 styles. Anyone? I can hear virtual brains, gears are churning. The main difference, Junmai means pure rice, which means that there would be no additional alcohol added to the product, whereas with Honjozo, it's very popular for that style to have additional alcohol added. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few moments. So that's the big difference. So Junmai, it's just rice, there's no additional alcohol, and then Honjozo style, there will be some alcohol added. And again, we'll get into the rhyme and the reason and the why in a little bit. So for last week, again, we talked a little bit about the RPR indicator, the rice polishing ratio, and what to expect when you see those numbers. So RPR again means how much of the rice is either sanded, or that's my term, or polished, being the technical term, and the different degrees and levels that the rice grain is polished or sanded, if you will give you an idea of what you can expect flavor and aroma wise. And then finally, we tasted 2 Junmai styles of sake. One was a Junmai Jingo, and the other one was a Junmai Daijingo. And again, just a quick recap, Daijingo meant big jingo, so we expected to see bigger, bolder aromas and flavors, and we did in fact see that. So last week, I think we ran 20 minutes and it was jam-packed. So there we go. That was last week. Again, more details, and to see exactly what we talked about last week and the week before, visit Somm4All on Facebook, visit IGTV, or Somm4All's YouTube channel. All right, deep breath. Whew. Today, let's kick off episode 3 by quickly chatting a little bit more about that rice grain polishing that I've been talking about in the first episode and again last week. When we talk about the rice grain and the polishing, we have not yet chatted about what is done or what happens to the grains that are sanded away, essentially. So we know from last week that the more of the rice grain that remains intact, so the less that is sanded, the more that remains intact of the rice grain, then the tendency is that we're going to find more cereal, more lactic, more savory aromas and flavors, typically. The less of the grain that remains, so the more that's removed, the greater the tendency for more fruit and more floral notes. So, that's what we talked about last week. Again, that's the recap. Everyone still with me? Perfect. So now, again, what about the rice grain, whether it's a lot of it or a little, that is removed? Do they do anything with that? What happens with that? You know what? That's a great question. Thanks for asking it. The sanded rice grain does indeed serve a purpose, just not in sake production. The polished grain that is removed, again, whether it's a lot or a little, is called the nuka, and it's often used in livestock feed and in foods such as Japanese pickles and even Japanese crackers. Waste not, want not as a culture. You gotta love it. So no part of that rice grain is done or is used for nothing. So that's just to give you some context on the rice grain as a whole and what we see sake-wise, and then what happens with the part that's removed. Okay, so let's change gears just a little bit, and we're going to talk about that Honjozo style of sake that I'm having a little trouble sourcing here in Ontario. Again, it falls into what I'm going to call the premium category, and it's one of those six dominant categories. And Honjozo indicates that a small amount of distilled alcohol has been added to the product. Now, this is not done as a means of increasing the yield to the sake, meaning, they're not trying to just get more liquid by adding it in. It's actually done for some very specific reasons. One of the reasons, adding distilled alcohol can have the effect of lightening up the sake, making it a bit more easy drinking. Another reason that they add it is adding a bit of distilled alcohol can draw out more fragrant and flavorful components. So, you're going to get higher aromatics and higher flavor compounds on the palate. And while this is all done, and directly related to what the brewmaster or the person making the sake is trying to convey in terms of style and in terms of aroma and flavors, it's important to note that adding that alcohol to the sake doesn't mean it's a fortified beverage. By fortified beverage, it's not like a port, it's not like a sherry. When distilled alcohol is added to sake, additional water is also added as well. So, to make sure that they tamper down that alcohol by volume to fall, I said the range typically is 15 to 17%. That's on average what you see, but as you'll find today, some of them can fluctuate a little bit. But they add some water when they add alcohol to make sure it's not boozy, and just that alcohol again has the effect of changing the aromas and the flavors that you can expect. So that's why it's been done. Honjozo is often thought to also be a style of sake that is much better enjoyed warm. That leads to a discussion about what temperature sake should be enjoyed at. Temperature itself has a very profound effect on a sake's profile. How it's going to smell, how it's going to taste, and even how it's going to feel in your mouth. Different aromas and flavors are going to shine when sake reaches different physical temperatures. So, whether these changes though will be, something that you're going to like, that's very subjective, and that's what we're going to, that's the whole thing about sake. There's no really hard and fast rules about it. It's very subjective. So, I will offer up some general guidelines though. The more a sake is chilled, and again, we're talking in general parameters here. The more a sake is chilled, the more aromas, that's the Irish accent coming out, folks. The more aromas, flavors, and acidity will be muted, or it's going to be, they're going to be pushed down a little bit. They're going to be harder to detect. For premium sakes, generally, the consensus is to serve them lightly chilled. Along the lines of what you would do with a white wine, let's say, which, just so I'm clear, does not mean putting ice cubes in it, does not mean placing the bottle in the freezer, does not mean packing your cooler with ice. There's a few of you out there that know what I'm talking about. My sisters in general, I don't know if they're watching or not, but there's a few other ones. So yeah, that's not what you do. Slightly chilled means, putting it on ice for a few moments, or you can put it in the fridge for a little bit, but you don't want the bottle screaming cold. Okay. Another guideline, the warmer a sake gets, as I said before, it changes, and the more sweet notes tend to pop out. So, again, the sweet notes are going to come out, the sweetness of the rice will come out, and generally speaking, it's going to be harder to detect any kind of bitterness, and generally they're going to be a little tougher to pick out different nuances that are within there, generally. See what I said earlier? No hard and fast rule, according to me. Somm4All says there's no hard and fast rule about this. At the end of the day, you like what you like. I encourage you to experiment with sake, of course, the different styles and different serving temperatures. Just because some people enjoy jingo and dai jingo slightly chilled, doesn't mean that you wouldn't like it warmed or slightly warmed or room temperature, as I've been doing for most of the tastings. So completely up to you guys, and again, I encourage you to experiment with that. As for how to warm your sake, well, the easiest and most recommended way is to place a vessel in a small pan of water or a small water source. You always want to avoid boiling or overheating your sake. Once that happens, if you get to the point where the sake itself is boiling or it's really steaming and starting to get really, really hot, it's just never the same. It really becomes unbalanced, and it's going to taste and feel syrupy in the mouthfeel, so it doesn't do well to that. I've known some people who swear by microwaving their sake. To each their own. I am not the foremost heating of sake expert in the world. I am a sommelier, I have accreditations, I've studied sake, but I can't tell you not to do that. It does work. I've seen it work. To me, in my opinion and on my palate, the way I taste, when you do that to a sake, you throw it in the microwave, I find it comes out very flat, regardless of whatever style it is. So, jingo, dai jingo we had last week, or the styles we're going to talk about today, I find it's kind of flat, and yeah. I would suggest that you can, stick to heating it in a water source, when trying to warm up your sake. And then when heating your sake, try to move it around. So whatever you put the sake into to get hot in the water, try to move it around so that it heats evenly, as you're seeing I'm doing over here. Now, a word of caution though, some people do claim that drinking warm sake hits them a lot harder than if they were to drink it at room temperature or chilled or slightly chilled. There's no science behind this, but just the same, you've been warned. Maybe you'll be one of those lucky few or unlucky few, depending on which way you like to slice it. Okay, so we do have some sake here that we're going to taste, but before we dive into the tasting this week, let's talk about serving vessels, just kind of quickly. Traditionally, sake is drunk from small cups, kind of like this, but sizing can vary. So you can see it's not overly large, but small cups. These are called oshoko, and the sake is poured from a tapered flask. And again, you'll see different styles, but kind of like this one, more or less. And this flask here is called a tokuri. Now, these represent Japan's very deep and rich history with pottery. And it also ties into a long-standing Japanese tradition of pouring sake for one another as a sign of respect and friendship. So the small cups would indicate that you would have to pour more often for each other. So I would pour for you, you would pour for me. Smaller cups means we're doing that more and more. And that's more and more of a sign of respect and more sign of friendship, and you get the idea. So that's kind of what's behind it. They also look very nice as well. This set, for example, I got online at a big online retailer, not going to name names. You can find yours wherever you like it, should you choose to get one. Good conversation pieces as well, but they are very functional. And, all this said, though, in today's modern world, you can, of course, use wine glasses, even simple tumblers if that's all you have, to serve your sake. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that the type of glassware that you use is going to affect the aromas and the flavors a little bit. Same as in the world of wine and beer and spirits. You don't need a tokori, you don't need an oshoko. But you will, depending on what you're using as your drinking vessel, it's going to change. And I'm not going to get too deep into this and too off course, but essentially the wider the rim of the glass and the more air that gets in affects the flavor profiles. And that's why in the world of wine, you have some advocates and purists that suggest this certain wine glass for this certain style of wine. And same in the world of spirits, and even the same in beer. So again, Just something to keep in mind. And if you're using a microwave to heat your sake, that's up to you. Again, not my choice. Again, I prefer using a water bath. Now, you don't have to go out and buy a tokori like this to do it, especially if you're novice and you're kind of beginning out and you want to try something. This will equally work if you have a glass Pyrex measuring cup. Pyrex is important because it can withstand heat, and good old pot. No, it's not just a hat, folks. You put some water in here, you put your sake in here, and you throw that on the stove. Again, you want to watch and make sure that you don't get to the point where your sake is boiling. You can buy thermometers, and you can look online, and there's different temperatures that are out there, but that's pretty hardcore. Essentially, you can put your finger in, you can feel the vessel itself. If it's getting way too hot, then you know it's time to remove it. You don't want to boil your sake, you just want to warm it up. So there you go, some little tips there. Okay. Other things that are going to affect your sake experience. It's not just the glasses that you choose or how you heat it up, but things such as your mood, your hunger level, the people that you're with, the environment that you're in. Are you inside? Are you outside? Are you on vacation? Are you celebrating? What did you eat or drink just before you're having your sake? All of these things will affect your perception of the sake. Will also hold true for the world of wine and beer and spirits. But we're talking sake, so just some things to keep in mind when you're tasting sake. You may like sake today on Saturday, and then you'll have it again tomorrow or the next week, and the same style and same type of glassware, but for whatever reason you like it more or less, and it comes back to those outside influences, likely. Okay, the theory portion is now over. Everyone can take a collective sigh of relief. You folks still with me? Everyone still on board, whether you're watching this on the replay or live? Okay, good. Because I don't know about you, but I'm thirsty, and it's time to taste. So, as posted on my Instagram feed yesterday, today's choices are a draft sake. That's a style, draft style sake. It's a junmai, so pure rice, so no alcohol has been added to this one. And the other one is a Nigori style sake. Again, it's a junmai, so pure rice, no alcohol. Both of these are produced by Hakutsuru Brewing Company, the same folks that produced the sake that we had last week. Quick recap on Hakutsuru. The name translates to white crane loosely and dates back to about 1747. The brewery itself is located in the Nara region of Kobe, Japan. That's a popular spot for making sake, as that area is known for its water source, as a revered water source from spring water source, and about 10% of all sake production comes out of that region. Hakutsuru, as a company, it's now ranked as the #1 selling sake company in Japan. That's a leaf rolling down the roof, in case anyone is wondering. Joys of being outside. Okay, so let's start with the Nigori. So this is a Sayuri Nigori. And I'm going to give it a shake, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment. But shook it up a little bit. Lovely pink bottle. No, it's not a rosé sake, in case you're wondering. But I'm going to pour it in, and you're going to see something a little bit different. So the alcohol on this is 12.5%. So, I'd say fairly lower than that 15 to 17 range we've talked about. But, that's what it is, 12.5%. And the rice polishing ratio, that RPR or sanding, is 70%. So 30% of the rice grain has been removed. Now, Nigori itself is a style that means the sake has been coarsely filtered. So the other three sakes that we've had, you've noticed they've been clear and colorless and what have you, and that's because they've been, filtered, tightly, using, very, very fine filtering techniques. Nigoris use coarse filtering. So what that means is it allows some sediment from the rice to get through into the final product. These tend to be very aromatic, and that sediment stays in the finished product. It's also the reason it's a little cloudy. Sayuri literally means lily, and that's, I think, fairly well named for this one. So try and get a little close up there. So it's fairly milky, fairly cloudy. Initial aromas are, when it's at this room temperature, although I say room temperature and we're probably at around 10 degrees Celsius outside today, so you can almost call this slightly chilled. I'm slightly chilled standing here. So, I get that white grape juice. It reminds me of, when my sisters were young, or, young kids like that white grape juice stuff. So that's kind of what it reminds me of on the nose. There's also some fresh cream. And then I get some apple blossom, some floral. So that's what I'm saying when they call this, the reference to lily. Yeah, floral. I definitely get that floral off it. And then I get, a touch of that grain, like rice is there as well. Very delicate, soft. Okay, let's go in for a taste. Okay, big taste. On the palate, soft as well, lightly creamy, not overly thick or anything like that, but just lightly creamy in texture and in taste as well. I get a little of that cooked rice. So when you cook rice, cooked rice flavor. There's some floral taste to it. So if you've ever had edible flowers in restaurants, or if you do it yourself from your garden or whatever, there is that little bit of a floral note there. Very soft though, very, very smooth, very easy to drink. I don't get a lot of fruit. I get a lot more of that rice or rice pudding and that creaminess, lactic notes. The acid in my mouth is not overly watering, so it feels clean, but it's not very acidic. I'm gonna have another little taste of that. Very easy to drink. Quite enjoy that. Okay, let's move on to our draft sake. So this guy, draft sake, comes in 14.5% alcohol by volume, so still a smidge below that 15 to 17 range, but again folks, that's just a general range. It's not a hard fast rule, but you will see most come into that 15-17 range. RPR, rice polishing ratio, same as this guy, 70%. So let's pour him in here and see the difference right away between the two. And so what does draft sake itself mean? Well, draft sake means that it's been aged for 1 month to stabilize it in cool temperatures, usually at 5 degrees Celsius. For those of you, that go Fahrenheit, that's about 41 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's constantly at that temperature, and it's aged for 1 month. That's done to produce a fresh sense. The thought and the result of that is a sake is going to come off as being fresh and bright. I love what these guys have done. It's like an old school mini milk bottle, so I like the look. And then it's got a pull tab. Now, kind of interesting with the pull tab. It looks neat and whatever, but the pull tab kind of indicates that once you've opened it, it's open. It doesn't have a screw cap lid or whatever. So your shelf life on this is going to be probably 48 hours or less. So you want to drink it when you were having, draft sake. You're going to want to drink this, very soon after opening. So let's take a look at the product. Clear, colorless, we can see. And I call this slightly chilled as well. Again, we're 10 degrees in the shade a little bit here. On the nose, it's got fairly pronounced aromas that are, it's like creamy homemade rice pudding, more so than this guy. It's definitely more prominent. There's a nuttiness. I'm thinking, unsalted cashew or Brazil nut is what comes to mind. A little bit of fruit, maybe underripe pear, so not a ripe pear, but underripe pear. And again, a little bit of coconut. So very interesting. Lots going on in this. Yeah. The executive producer gave me a funny look, but yeah, there's definitely a little coconut in this, in my opinion. Okay, so what's it taste like? On the palate, definitely light, very light, and it's bright. And that's that freshness I think that they're looking for. It is fresh on the mouth. It wakes your mouth up a bit. I'm getting the rice, but on the palate, the rice is not as puddingy. Puddingy? Puddingy. It's not as much of a rice pudding feel as taste as I'm getting on this. Well, I may have invented a new word by accident. Still getting a bit nutty, but that fresh nut, Brazil nut's kind of what's coming through there. And it's almost like a dried coconut flavor that I'm getting. And then I get this melon type, so maybe a honeydew. I don't think it's cantaloupe, I think it's more like honeydew to kind of keep everything nice and clean. And then just at the end, a little touch of creaminess, fresh cream. So quite interesting. Again, lots going on in the palate, lots going on in the nose. Wow. Okay, so what are my thoughts on these two guys? Well, first off, just gentle reminder, I'm not affiliated with these sakis in any way, shape, or form. Or any of the sakis that I've showcased so far or will continue to showcase. So, this is all done on my accord for educational purposes. I've bought them. I've chosen them. So, not affiliated with Hakutsuro or with any of the sake companies. So what do I think? Well, for the beginner or the novice sake drinker, again, I believe these two are, very interesting and good budget-friendly examples of trying different styles. The Nigori sake, this guy here, 300 milliliter bottle, $8.50 at the LCBO. Stock number 32193, in case any of you would like to try it. Again, that's a 300 milliliter bottle. The Hakutsuro Draft Sake, $7.20 at the LCBO. Stock number 468173. And again, that's a 300 milliliter bottle. So, pretty budget friendly, pretty easy on the wallet to try two different styles again that I think on an entry level beginner basis are good examples of what you can expect and how you can taste differences between them. Okay, so that's here, that's here, that's here. So now you maybe have seen this going and wondering what I've been doing. Well, I've been warming this guy up, and the reason for that is last week we tried this Junmai Dai Jingo, so big Jingo. We tried it last week. I said that at room temperature it had flavor profiles of pear and of apple, some floral notes, peach was in there. Now that it's warm, again, it's not screaming hot, but it's warm. Let me give it a try and see how it compares. To me, this warm comes off a little flat. On what do I mean by flat? The aromas and the flavors are a bit hard to find. I do get a little apple. I don't find the peach anymore. I get the rice. Really not getting much floral. It's like everything kind of melds together. Not bad, just not for me. I don't find it very interesting like this. You, though, may like it, but for me, I don't find it as interesting when it's warm like this versus how it was when it was at slightly chill to room temperature. So I wanted to showcase that just to show you and do it live. What I saw between heating sake and leaving it chilled. So there you go, little example. I got to use my Oshoko too. All right, so again, a lot of information today for the intro to sake, but it just goes to show you that there is so much to talk about and to experience with the world of sake. It's a wrap for today. I hope you've enjoyed episode 3 of September Sake Saturdays with Somm4All. That's me. Next week, we're going to talk about food pairings. Sake is very food friendly. We're going to have some more fun facts about sake, some more info, but not as much theory as today. We're going to have a surprise or two, working on a few things. And of course, there will be another live tasting. So, as I take my cloudy sake here, thank you all for joining me here today. A little earlier than what we've been doing. Next week, we're going to be back at 4 p.m. But this week's it's a pretty important day for my executive producer, so needed to make sure we had some time to celebrate together. socially distanced here on the farm, just the two of us. See you all right back here, 4 p.m. next Saturday, September 26th, for the fourth and final installment of September Saké Saturdays with Somm4All. If you have questions, if you want to inquire about maybe doing your own private guided tasting of sake with me, that is a service that I offer, you can DM me on Facebook, Instagram. You can send me an email, paul@somm4all.com. We can set something up. In the meantime, folks, be well, be safe, and cheers from Somm4All.